What if our world was on the brink of a massive change? What if the internet was really just beginning? What if we were about to reach a level of global cooperation never dreamt possible? So in minutes, I just downloaded an app on my phone, I transferred in some dollars, and I purchased Ether. That's today, in January 2021. But there's a chance that in the future, what I just did will be considered extremely slow, and buying Ether could be as common as taking a breath of air. But what exactly is Ether, and what is Ethereum for that matter? Well, some people's answer to that question would be the future, of course, and that's because Ethereum is a project to create a global supercomputer that's operated by everyone but owned by no one. An internet 3.0, if you will. I find the illustrations done on ethereum.org both beautiful and helpful to imagine the distant future that they're picturing. Clearly, these are artistic and abstract creations, but nonetheless represent the ideal essence of the ambitious goal the Ethereum network is seeking to achieve. Ethereum is a community-based project that's trying to allow us to regain control of our data, eliminate all middlemen from trade, and allow us to cooperate with one another without having to trust one another. Remember, I said it was ambitious. I created this video to serve as a jumping off point into the world of Ethereum. You aren't going to become an expert on Ethereum after watching this video, and you may even leave it with more questions than answers. But that's kind of the point, because I want you to be able to watch this and then kind of venture off into the deep and rich world of Ethereum on your own. Think of this like an orientation to get yourself started, and then from there, the rabbit hole awaits. To understand what Ethereum actually is, let's take a step back and look at our current internet today. So I have my phone here and I'm going to look at the App Store, for example. So here I can find thousands of apps that have been created by different companies. Think about the apps that you may have downloaded on your own phone. So maybe something like Instagram, for example. When you upload a photo to Instagram, where does it go exactly? Well, simply put, you're essentially handing this photo over to Instagram where they're going to store it on their own servers. So you see, when you interact with any kind of application like that today, that application essentially acts as a middle person who you have to go through in order to transmit information. So any information you hand over to this application, whether that be your name, email address, phone number, address, whatever it is, they take it and they store it on their own servers. So effectively, all around us, there is this invisible network of information that's being stored on various servers around the world. And this information is being stored by what are known as centralized parties. And a centralized party is just kind of crypto speak for a private entity that has centralized control over something. So for example, Google. Everything you type into Google, everything you do on Google, Gmail, emails, whatever it is, all of that information is stored by and controlled by Google. If you are not a part of Google, you do not have access to this information. So it's centralized to Google. So this is problematic for a few reasons. First of all, I'm not in control of my own data. All these applications I use, they're storing my data on my behalf. But frankly, I don't know if I can trust them to hold my data like that. And secondly, it's very expensive for these companies to basically operate these massive servers to store all of our data. And guess what? These costs get passed on to you in some way or another. Ethereum is the complete opposite of this, and that's because Ethereum is completely decentralized. And remember, centralized, decentralized, this is all fancy crypto speak. Decentralized basically just means that there's no third-party private entity that has control over this thing. And if that sounds confusing, it's probably because there's not really anything currently like it. There's nothing to compare it to. So I know all of this may sound confusing right now, but please just try and stick with me, and I will do my best to kind of give you an orientation into this crazy world. Imagine it like this. Let's say a friend and I wanted to send a message to one another. So in today's world, we might have to use something like an app on our phones, like Facebook Messenger, for example. So I type my message into Facebook Messenger and then I hit send. And then from there, it doesn't go directly to my friend. It actually goes to Facebook's servers, where they kind of act almost like this little storage box where they take my message, they store it in there, and then from there, they then take it out and then give it to my friend. So they kind of intercept it and store it. They are effectively a middleman that's capturing and then storing and then controlling our data. Now let's imagine a future in which Ethereum is the network that we operate on. So again, I go to send a message to my friend, and so I use whatever applications are running on the Ethereum network, and I type in my message and I hit send. And then it goes to my friend. So from my point of view, I didn't notice anything different happen, but that's because the difference is all happening under the hood. You see, when I sent this message, it actually went directly to my friend. It didn't stop anywhere. It didn't get intercepted by any third party acting as a middleman. And that's what I mean by Ethereum being this decentralized thing. Ethereum is not run by any single corporations, companies, or entities. It's run by all of us. What I'm trying to get you to understand here is that this would be an internet built by the people, for the people, and no single person would be in control. We'd all be in control together, and this makes it possibly the most, or one of the most, noble pursuits ever attempted in the history of humanity. Now remember, all of this might not make a ton of sense quite yet, and part of that reason is because there's nothing to easily compare Ethereum to. There's nothing in our current world of our digital infrastructure that we currently have in place that resembles what Ethereum is trying to accomplish, so it might be hard for our brains to kind of wrap around this completely new idea. So you might have questions like, how the heck does this actually work? Like, who runs this magical Ethereum network, and what is Ether and why does it have value? I'll be talking about the cryptocurrency Ether later on in this video, but remember, I just want this video to serve as a jumping off point for you so that you can decide, kind of choose your own adventure style of how you want to proceed down the rabbit hole. For now, let me tell you about perhaps the second most important aspect of Ethereum: smart contracts. Smart contracts will completely revolutionize almost every single aspect of our lives in ways that we just can't even fathom today. Remember those illustrations that I showed you earlier that kind of imagine this digital utopian future? That future will run on smart contracts. Let me give you an analogy to help you understand what a smart contract is and what it actually does. So I'm sitting beside my bookshelf right here, right? Well, let's say that this wasn't actually a normal bookshelf, and instead it was a book vending machine. And so we go up to the vending machine and we see that there is a price of $1 per book for every book inside. So let's say I were to put 50 cents into the machine. What would happen? Well, nothing, because I haven't put in enough money to actually buy a book. So let's say I put in another 50 cents. So now there's a total of $1 in the machine. Now I can select which book I want, and the machine will then spit out my book. This is exactly what a smart contract is and what it does. Except instead of physical vending machines like I just talked about, the smart contracts built on Ethereum are built inside of applications that then run on the Ethereum network. So you can kind of think of them like digital futuristic vending machines. So for example, let's say in the future that ran on Ethereum, if I wanted to buy a car, I could go and look at all of the essentially smart contracts available for cars, and sellers could make a smart contract to sell their car. So they would list the price that they wanted to sell their car for, they would list any other conditions that would have to be met in order for the car to be sold, and then they could put up their smart contract. And then all the buyer has to do is come along, pay the money, pay the ether into the smart contract, meet all the conditions that the buyer has listed, and boom, the smart contract will automatically transfer the money from the buyer to the seller, and it will also then transfer the car ownership from the seller to the buyer. So you can see how this eliminates middlemen from essentially any aspect of trade. And that's honestly kind of just the tip of the iceberg of what smart contracts can do. Think about how powerful it is. This smart contract essentially operates as the middleman that we have in our society today, except instead of it being Google, Facebook, Amazon, a bank, whatever, it's just this line of code that we ourselves have created and that no one owns. We all kind of collectively own it together. This means we don't have to trust a car dealership, a bank, a digital corporation like Google in order for us to be able to cooperate amongst each other. This smart contract, this line of code that we create, will ensure that the transaction is processed exactly to the T of the specifications that are set out by the buyers and sellers. Now, not to be confused, a smart contract isn't actually smart in the sense that it's like artificial intelligence that's operating the contract. The contract itself doesn't do any thinking, it doesn't make any decisions. It's basically just a set of conditions like a vending machine where if you put in the right amount of money or meet the right conditions, then the, reward will essentially be spit out to you. It doesn't think for itself. It just allows people to cooperate with each other without having to trust one another. This would make worldwide cooperation reach an unprecedented scale. All right, so in this future 3.0 internet thing, we have these smart contracts, and a lot of these smart contracts are going to involve the exchange of money, right? So what kind of money are we talking here? Are we talking dollars, pesos, euros? What is it? No, this is where Ether comes in. Ether is the cryptocurrency that's used on the Ethereum network to basically pay for everything on the Ethereum network. Any smart contract will be priced in and paid for using Ether. Now, Ether is a cryptocurrency just like Bitcoin. It's built upon the same blockchain technology and shares basically a ton of similarities to Bitcoin. Now, there are some differences between the two currencies, and a lot of that has to do with their monetary policy, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Basically, the easiest way to think about it is Ether is like Bitcoin, but native to the Ethereum platform. But why can't we use dollars or any other kind of currency on the Ethereum network? Well, we have to remember that the whole point of these cryptocurrencies is to basically decentralize them from any independent governments or nation states or whatever, and basically create this global currency that can be used by anyone, anywhere without limitations. They want this currency to be in the hands of the people. So why is Ether valuable? Why are investors willing to pay so much money for it? Well, because Ether is used as the settlement currency on the Ethereum network. That means any applications that run and have transactions, you have to pay for those transactions with Ether. That gives it value. And as more and more applications are built upon the Ethereum network, theoretically, Ether should also increase in value because there's now more demand to run applications, process transactions, which then require more Ether. Now, there's a lot more behind the value of Ether on the Ethereum network, such as how Ether is used to pay for gas on the network. But again, I'm not going to cover every single thing in this video because it's just not possible. But that's an interesting area for further research that I would suggest. At this point in time, though, one of the main drivers of the value of Ether is investors and whether or not they think that Ethereum will ultimately succeed. And so ultimately, Ethereum is like a base layer operating system, just like something like iOS or Android. It's an operating system that then applications can be built upon. And because of how large the use cases are for things like smart contracts, it's increasingly looking like something like Ethereum could be the base layer operating system for our future. And that's why many people are referring to it as the Internet 3.0. It's essentially trying to be the base layer of a better version of our society. Now, perhaps all this talk of completely revolutionizing our society has gotten you a bit fired up, but first let's stop, take a breath, and realize that there's a lot of risks involved here that we need to be aware of. The first thing is that cryptocurrencies like Ether, their price is extremely volatile, and that's because it's very similar to venture capital investing. Now, when a small company starts out, they're small, but they have a big idea. The market essentially goes through this phase called price discovery, where they're trying to decide what the fair price of this thing should be. Except a lot of companies, when they start out and they're just private companies, not publicly traded companies, they only have to go through this phase of price discovery maybe once a year when they release their annual reports or when they have to raise money to do some funding. So we don't get to see this massive fluctuation in their price when they're in their baby stages. But with crypto, they're traded real time, every second of every day, 24/7. So we see the full price discovery phase, and that's why it's so volatile. We see all these opinions of people thinking, oh my God, this is the next biggest thing. Nope, it's going to zero. And we see those emotions and opinions play out in real time. And Ethereum, the platform itself, is also in its baby stages. It's not even 20 years old yet, okay? So if this is going to be the base layer of our future society for the next hundreds or thousands of years, we're at just the little tiny blip. We're at the birth of this thing. So there's obviously going to be a ton of complications, questions, and problems that are going to have to be solved. Ultimately, you have to look at this like an experimental idea to massively change the world. So yes, there are massive risks involved, there is massive uncertainty involved, but a really unique aspect of Ethereum specifically and other cryptocurrency projects is that this movement, again, it's not controlled by any one single person. So anyone can kind of lend a hand, anyone can join the cause. As long as they have a good idea, they can try it out. This all kind of makes it the ultimate meritocracy, right? And I think on that note, I will end it there. So remember, I am not an expert in cryptocurrency. I think there's very few people who are because, again, this is continuously evolving every day before our eyes, and it's a collective effort from so many different people across the globe. And also, please do not consider any of this as financial advice. Remember, there are a ton of risks involved with cryptocurrency. I just wanted to create a video to serve, again, as this jumping off point from which you can kind of choose your own adventure of how you want to then proceed into the world of Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies. And I have to warn you, once you start learning about this stuff, you may find yourself staying up really late into the night and calling normal money fiat currency and calling people who don't invest in cryptocurrency non-coiners and using all these weird terms. It'll happen, trust me. There's stages that people go through when they start looking into this. But anyway, thanks for watching. Don't do anything stupid, and I'll see you soon.